Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT. Bandwidth for Triangulation is brought to you by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Triangulation with Tom Merritt and Leo Laporte. Episode 1, recorded December 22nd, 2010. Warren Spector. It's time once again for Triangulation. We got a name now.
Oh, good.
Triangulation, because there's one side, two side. I'm isosceles.
Here are two vertices.
Yes. And then we're going to interview you, the people. Actually, today we're going to interview a legend in the game industry, Warren Spector. He's actually got a new game out, relatively new game. We saw this at E3.
Quite a
E4.
splash. People were really anticipating this, but then it's had mixed reviews.
Well, I haven't played. I only played it at played with it at E3 and enjoyed it quite a bit. It's called Epic Mickey, and it's a little bit of a darker Mickey, a little bit of a different Mickey. It's kind of a, if you've played Rayman, very similar. You're wandering a world, but there's lots of old vintage Mickey footage,
which is cool because he's working with Disney on it.
And there's some very innovative gameplay. There's painting and stuff in it. So let's get Warren Spector on the line and talk to him about, he was involved in, what was his first game? Was it Wing
Commander is what
on the Atari?
Was, yeah. 1990 Wing Commander.
1990 Wing Commander, the PC version.
Yeah.
You may remember Deus Ex, System Shock, which is an amazing game. He was legendary as the Austin branch of Ion Storm, and I remember very well people talking with great reverence about Warren Spector. So let's get him on the line here. And this time we're doing something a little different. We're using Google and Gtalk because Skype, as we do this, Skype is dead.
There he is.
Hey, Warren.
Hey, good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Is this your first Gtalk interview?
This is my first Gtalk interview, yeah.
Yeah, it's ours too. Skype failed us.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, I thought it was invincible.
Me too.
But it's teaching us new things.
You're right. I'm not sure I wanted to be learning them at the last minute, but here we are.
That's life. So are you in Austin right now?
I am. I'm in my office in Austin, Texas, you bet.
Are you keeping things weird?
Hey, everybody in Austin does. It's part of the deal.
Is that the slogan in Austin?
Keep Austin weird.
Keep Austin weird. I love it.
What part of Austin are you in?
North Central, if that means anything to you.
It does. I lived in Austin for 6 years, so I don't know if it means anything to the audience.
And you left?
I did.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I came out to San Francisco. Couldn't find any jobs there. Ion Storm wouldn't hire me.
Oh.
No,
I don't think he applied.
I never actually applied there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was interested. I was looking up on your Wikipedia article, and I saw that you went to the RTF department at the University of Texas for graduate school.
Yeah, I did. I was a film guy, specialized in animation history, so things kind of work out for the best, I guess.
Did you ever take classes from Tom Schatz? Do you remember him?
Tom, he taught the first class I took at the University of Texas, and he was my advisor on my master's degree and was the head of my committee when I was working on my doctorate. Yeah,
I guess that's a yes.
Great guy, really smart guy.
I know Tom real well. Yeah.
Everything I learned about film theory and literary theory, I learned in his RTF class. When I was...
He's a pretty smart guy, no doubt about it.
So it was interesting to me that you thought you were going to be a film critic, huh?
Yeah, I loved writing about movies. I mean, I was a 7-day-a-week movie guy and thought that's where I was heading. But, someone gives you the chance to actually make games for a living, you kind of have to jump at that.
So what'd you think of Tron Legacy?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet.
Can't say. Sorry.
We were just gonna diverge and do
we're
the
just
whole
gonna
thing.
ask you about movies the whole time.
Well, I'm happy to talk about movies. That particular one, not so much just yet.
Actually, it's interesting because I think gaming has become more and more cinematic in time. When you first started, well, Wing Commander certainly was a little cinematic. You must have always been a little influenced by that.
Well, the thing that strikes me as weird about my life is how all the pieces sort of fit together. It's not like I had any great plan, but I was a writer, I was a film guy, I was a role-playing guy, tabletop game guy, and somehow everything sort of came together in this video game place, So I really am just about the luckiest guy in the world.
Do you apply some of the things you learned about narrative construction in your video games, or do you feel like it's a different discipline?
Well, a little of both. I mean, I hate to be wishy-washy, but you know, there are certainly lessons to be learned, but there are also a lot of lessons we don't want to learn because the media, they're very different, and so I describe them as dangerously similar.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff you have to unlearn.
Well, movies are linear. They have 3 acts. They move from point A to point B to point C. The characters go through a transition, and games are nonlinear.
Well, games are nonlinear, but actually the games that I make and have made for the last 20 years, they do tell a story, and they do have a 3-act structure, and characters do have a story arc. The places where we give players freedom are, you know, the minute to minute, but there's still a narrative arc that someone has to own, and in my games, that's, well, my team anyway. I was going to say me, but that's kind of that's a little too highfalutin. But you know, the thing is, like, we don't do things like parallel action. Showing what's happening off screen. We don't do irony very well. You know, I think the fact that it's
really interesting. There's no irony in video games.
There's no irony. No, it's all you in the moment doing stuff. You know, I mean, that's a huge difference.
That's really interesting. You're absolutely
there are
right.
a lot of differences. Yeah, there are a lot of differences. That's the one that I wish I could figure out how to be ironic in a game, but I can't. Maybe Tim Schafer's smart enough to do that, but not me.
In fact, video games kind of beg for irony in some ways. I mean, they're almost, once you start irony in a video game, you're dead.
Yeah,
because then the whole
you're
thing,
undercutting the player experience.
Right. Yeah, then everything seems ironic.
You're showing footage of Wing Commander 1, aren't you?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Well, what year was this? 90, right?
Oh my God, 1990. Yeah.
So
I
this
was an associate producer. Holy cow!
State of the art.
It was. You know, I actually I gave a talk. Where was it? At PAX, I guess, in Seattle. And I showed footage from a bunch of old games, and it was just amazing because we really thought we were. I mean, I guess we did change the world, but we thought this was so hot.
This was at a time. I can remember thinking like, "Oh my gosh, it's almost like pictures," which it seems silly to us now.
Now it's not.
Now it looks blocky. You can see every pixel now, but back then that was as close to a movie as I'd ever seen on my computer.
Yeah, I remember sitting. I was having dinner with Chris Roberts, who was the project director on this, and we were talking about what should our box look like. And we said, "Man, our graphics look so good. We should just put a screenshot on the box." And we did.
My honor is to obey. Poor Warren. These will haunt you forever. But out of context, of course, that's not fair. But really, this was a great game. I remember this game vividly.
At the time, it was pretty state of the art. There's no doubt. I mean, we were pushing the boundaries pretty hard.
But you were living in a world where gaming, to get a game like this working on a PC was such a nightmare. It was DOS. This was DOS based at the time, right?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, making games for the PC was interesting. I mean, well, the really insane thing was when we tried to take those PC games and put them on the Commodore 64 or the Apple II, but that was a real trick. Holy cow!
Yeah, I think that's how I experienced Wing Commander was Commodore 64.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It was like having a feature phone is these days. Having to play Wing Commander on the Commodore. All your PC friends are kicking dirt in your face.
Well, in some ways, we're going back, aren't we, to those constrained hardware environments with very limited screens, and maybe that was good training for people who are developing for portable platforms these days. I don't know.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through that once. I'm not sure I wanted to go through it again, but here we are.
Have you thought about or been tempted or been pulled to do any development for mobile platforms, or is that something you don't mess with?
You know, it's funny. It's something I'd really like to do. I just, as a palate cleanser between courses, I guess. But no one's crazy enough to let me do it. Exactly, it's a moose bouche. I would love to do something really small. Just sit down with 2 or 3, 4 guys and do something small instead of these 3-year extravaganzas.
Well,
I don't know if anyone will ever let me do it.
In a way, technology starts to take over, and then story becomes less important, strategy becomes less important. But ultimately, in the long run, no game succeeds based on the quality of its graphics. It succeeds, in my opinion, ultimately because it's playable, because it's engrossing, because it somehow captures your imagination.
Yeah, I mean, we have to immerse players in these worlds and make them believe they're there and it's them doing stuff. That's what we do that other media don't. So we kind of have I think of it as a moral obligation actually to do that.
Well, and that ties back into
crazy.
It ties back into what you're saying about the narrative being different in a video game, because in a movie, all you have to do is have good characters in an immersive environment, but you have to do that and be playable. So you have to be able to navigate that environment. Is that why you feel that moral sensibility, because you have them in your hands?
Well, I don't know if it's that so much as that, how often do you get to help create a new medium of expression and communication? It's like, once or twice a century, movies and radio and I guess television in the 20th century. Okay, so maybe 3. But, it doesn't come along very often. And if you're going to be working in an entirely new medium, why would you do stuff that other media already do? So you kind of, that's where the moral obligation comes from for me. It's just trying to do something that no one's ever done, no one's ever been able to do.
It's an obligation to the art.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be really embarrassed about talking about video games as an art form, but I got over that. I'm too old to be embarrassed about that kind of stuff now. We are an art form, and everybody I know who I really respect in this medium, which is almost everybody. It's an amazing place to work. Really does think about themselves as having something to say. And so, yeah, it's an art form, and we're obliged to do what we do that other media don't. I really believe that.
Did you follow the controversy around Roger Ebert and the whole art, whether video games are art thing? What was your perspective on that?
Yeah, of course. My perspective is it's irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. I mean, the reality is time is going to settle that issue. When everyone is a gamer, and we're pretty close to that now, everyone's going to know that it's an art form, and everyone's going to know that it's not dangerous, and everybody's going to know all that stuff. So all we have to do is wait, because we've already won, but it'll just take a little while for the rest of the world to figure it out.
It strikes me as similar to the comic book debate in the 50s. No, comic books weren't art. Yeah. Comic books were just these little throwaway things that were dangerous to our children. Video games going through almost exactly that same discussion.
Well, every medium does. I mean, if you think about it, okay, so go backwards in time. It was, comic books, rock and roll is going to destroy the world, movies. I mean, go back to the Legion of Decency and Joe Breen and the Hays Code and everything. I mean, if you have any sense of history, you know that every new medium goes through this. It's just we're the medium that the adults don't get yet.
Yeah.
Once the adults get it, we're done.
I love it.
So we'll all be complaining about something else.
What are you doing?
What our kids.
Yeah, right.
But then that raises the issue. Well, how do we preserve these classic games, because the platforms that you play them on are dying? I mean, unlike film, I mean, these. Are you sympathetic with the preservationist movement?
You're hitting all my hot buttons. Holy cow! Yeah, I'm a big believer in preserving history, and that comes right out of having come from a film history background, where 80% of films made before the talkies are just gone. Yeah. They're gone forever. And when I was trying to do research on my master's thesis and on my dissertation, the material just wasn't there. The old studios didn't think of themselves as an art form. They didn't think of themselves as being worth preserving, and so they just destroyed all of their records. And I'm damn well not going to let that happen in this business. So I've worked with the Center for American History here at the University of Texas, the Dolph Briscoe Center, to create a video game archive.
Fantastic.
The Strong Museum of Play is doing amazing stuff. The Smithsonian is doing stuff now. There's a huge preservation effort. It's hugely important.
How do you do it? Via emulators, or do you save these older systems? And what do you?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. I think a lot of folks are working on the very hard problem of preserving digital media.
Right.
And part of it is obviously emulators. Part of it is making sure that you have an Apple II tucked away somewhere that still works. But there's Richard Garriott did his first game, a Calibeth. Actually, it was before a Calibeth. His first game was done on a PDP-11. So all that exists is a little paper tape.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, I mean, if there's a working PDP-11 in the world, I don't know about it. So that may be gone forever. It's tragic. It really is.
I have to say though, I'm finding all these YouTube videos. This is System Shock. And what's great is YouTube is, in a way, somebody's played through these games and recorded them for posterity on YouTube. At the very least, we can see these playthroughs, and that's
worth a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than nothing. You don't get the experience of playing it, but at least you can see what it looked like. This was an amazing.
Yeah.
I remember when this came out because spatially you could move all around in here. This was a real breakthrough for a 1994 DOS game.
Yep. Yeah. The team at Looking Glass that did this was pretty sharp, to say the least.
You don't do engine design. You do game design. Is that correct? I'm sorry. Yeah, we're having trouble with the Google Talk. I should stop playing YouTube videos. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, me personally, I am not a programmer.
Okay. And so what happens? What is the workflow then for you for something like Epic Mickey? You've got an engine. Do you work with the engine designers?
Well, you know what? I always start with the experience. It's not a technology issue for me, at least at the start.
Right.
It starts with what do I want the player to see and feel and do, and then you either buy or build an engine that allows you to provide that experience for players.
Right.
So yeah, I work very closely with the engine designers, but boy, am I not a tech guy. I mean, I'm ashamed to admit that, and I wish I were. But
well, how do you work? Do you work with pen and paper? Do you draw, sketch? Do you write?
I do a lot of documenting, a lot of thinking with my fingertips on a keyboard, and a lot of talking to people who then have to go and do the real work. Is the way I describe it.
Interesting. So it's almost like you're like a screenwriter.
Well, to some extent, yeah. It's I see myself as the guardian of what I call the creative box. You know, everybody has their little buzzwords, but you know, you close your eyes, you get a picture in your head of an experience you want players to have. You describe that to a team of incredibly capable programmers, designers, and artists, sound people, you name it. And then my job is really just to make sure that everybody is being true to that vision and working within that creative box. And if they get stray from the box, you know, you push them back in, right?
And how do you describe the box? Do you use scripts, or do you just have general outlines, or
how do you use everything you can think of? You use dialogue. There's a lot of talking. A lot of the best work actually happens in the hallways, impromptu meetings, impromptu discussions to clarify points about how you realize the vision of a game. But there's a lot of documenting, and then there's a lot of playing. I mean, as soon as you have something playable, you sit down, you play it, and you say, here's how it doesn't fit the bill, you know, and you fix it.
Do you have an outline of what pieces have to be created to get you from the one part of the story to another, or do you kind of improvise? Is it more like jazz?
Well, for the way I describe the creative process, this is just me, and boy, if anybody's listening and they want to be a game developer, don't do what I do. Really,
you can't do what Warren Spector does.
I don't think there's
Nobody
a standard. I think everybody kind of finds their own way.
Well, it's a new medium. That's one of the pleasures of working in a new medium, is there is no rule.
That's exactly right. I mean, the fact is, we're still figuring it out, and you know, I kind of compare it to sculpting. You throw a bunch of clay onto a table, and then you sort of cut away the parts that don't look or feel right. But that's not the most efficient way to develop a game, which my publishers, I'm sure, are thrilled about.
It does take years, though. I mean, this is a 2, 3, 4 year process, right?
Yeah, I mean, I told Disney, I've told every publisher I've ever worked with that. You know, look at the last, now including Mickey, the last 7 games I've made have taken between 32 and 36 months.
Wow. So
if I tell you I'm going to make a game in 24 or 18, I'm probably lying. You know, don't believe it, because it's not going to happen. I'm a 3-year guy.
Do you like doing adventure games? I mean, shoot 'em ups. This is Ultima Underworld, which is another early game that you worked on, and this is the character designer right now. We're going to design the character.
Everything. Are you actually? You're not actually playing.
Oh, I wish I were. I mean,
I wish I could play it. Man,
I know, don't you wish?
Underworld again.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend the other day and just saying, you know, if someone would just update the graphics on this game, it'd still be the state of the art in role playing, which is kind of pathetic, actually. But you know, it's pretty true.
I feel that way about Dungeon Master. There's just these games that, and I think that we're now at the medium is mature enough that we are nostalgic about these games. And you can tell, just as you can tell what age cohort somebody belongs to from what TV show themes they know, you can tell from what game they love. You know, when I meet people who are really into Mario, I know how old they are. Yeah, and when I meet somebody who says, oh, yeah, Ultima Underworld or Dungeon Master, it tells you a lot about them. But this is a great game.
Now, did you play video games when you were young? Did you?
Well, when I was young, there were no video games. Okay, just to be clear, I'm
He's
like
the
the
same
oldest
age.
guy still making games.
We're the same age.
Sure,
Warren.
sure. But
in fact, you're
I'm
actually a
thinking-
little older than me, which is kind of amazing.
Yes, I win. I'm serious. I love being the oldest guy still making games. I think it's really kind of cool.
What was the first video game you played?
The first video game I played was probably Pong.
Yes, me too.
In a bar.
In a
Okay.
bar. In a bar.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in college getting a bunch of quarters and White Russians, and it was a table version of Pong. And I spent I was so enamored of it that I couldn't stop playing.
Yeah.
It was Pong.
That was you in that bar.
It wasn't Austin. It was like New Haven, Connecticut. But I'll never forget it.
That
I'll never
residue
forget
of
that
White Russian.
Yeah, and I'll
all over the
never
tape.
forget that experience.
Yeah.
You know, and it really does change your life when you say, "Wow, you can do this." I remember spending a lot of time on Chuck E. Cheese playing Battlezone. So you played Pong, and then after Pong, what?
Well, there was a bunch of stuff. I played a lot of games on a Trash 80 and some early computers and video game consoles. But the next game that really just blew my mind was Star Raiders on the Atari 800.
Yes. Did you figure out how to beat it?
I did.
Yeah.
You bet. I beat that game many times.
Me too. I bought an
fantastic.
Atari 800 just to play Star Raiders.
Yeah, well, I hot rodded my Atari 400 actually to play Star Raiders.
Yeah,
but it was remarkable. I mean, that was the first time. I mean, I remember I went to a party at a friend's house, and these are all my adult friends. And I walked into this darkened room. I was expecting, wild debauchery and all that stuff, and it was a dark room and completely silent except for the sounds of the pew 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 pew, of a video game. And that was the first time I said, that's me in a starship saving the universe. Not I'm watching somebody do it. That was life-changing right there. That was it.
That you can play on emulator. I believe that is out. That is out on emulator now.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody would really appreciate it now. But
very primitive 8-bit graphics.
Day,
yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that was the first true 3D game.
Right.
And certainly for a home console.
Well, in some ways, though, 8-bit has become cool again. It's become it's become a badge. It's
not so cool that you'd want to spend hours playing an 8-bit game, though.
Maybe not, but you see
Hyperwarp. Oh, this was fun.
Oh yeah.
Oh, listen. That sound. Come on, Warren. You know that brings back.
I'm loving
Yeah,
this.
it's like you're living again at that time. And then Red Alert because there's aliens in the quadrant. Oh man.
Yeah.
This
game was unbelievable. And then after this playing Ultima 4 and realizing that games could be more than just, go into this room, kill the monsters, grab the treasure. I mean the idea that games could be about something more. Richard Garriott really taught me that with Ultima 4.
Is he still around? Is he still? I know he went to space.
He came back.
Yeah, he told me the day I met him, he told me he was going to go into space.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, the guy lived his
He's not
dream.
doing games, though, anymore, is he?
He is, actually. Yeah, he came back and took some time off, and now he's got a company called Portalarium. I think they're doing, well, I shouldn't say. I think he's doing like mobile games or online games.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's got a new company now.
He specializes in amuse-bouche.
There you go. Well, he may be smarter than me. I maybe should be taking another lesson from him. I learned a lot from that guy, and maybe I should learn to do smaller things in the future. Who knows?
I don't know. Epic Mickey seems pretty epic. It seems pretty great. Although there have been some mixed reviews, and I read something interesting that you were happy about that. That you actually thought that was a good sign.
Well, in your dream world, everybody would love you unqualifiedly. Okay, to be clear, I mean that's the goal is to be loved universally, right? But if you can't have that, who wouldn't rather make something that polarizes people, that people really love or hate, or feel something strong emotionally? That seems like. If you really are an art form, you really kind of want to be pushing people to the extreme.
I love the style,
and we certainly have done
this. It's really an interesting game. There's a lot of interesting gameplay in it.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
I
mean
think so.
the color and all of that. But was it difficult to convince Disney to do something so kind of different from the traditional Mickey?
You know, I think people expect that to have been hard, but it really wasn't. The thing that people forget is that Disney Interactive Studios, I guess they were Buena Vista Games, BVG at the time, they came to me. I was happily pitching a fantasy role-playing game, and I had a near-future science fiction game I wanted to do. I was talking to John Woo about doing a film and movie deal.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It's Ninja Gold, man. We actually started working on it. We had a movie deal. We were working on the game, and Disney owns the rights now. So who knows? Maybe it'll happen. But they asked me if I was interested in doing a Mickey Mouse game, and you know, I had that moment of hesitation because I felt the same way that everybody else did, that it was going to be, you know, really hard to get them to do anything really really different and you know, aggressive, I guess. And it wasn't at all. They came to me with an idea that was so powerful, this world of forgotten and rejected characters, and you know, making Mickey the hero of a story again, and bringing Oswald back. I mean, those foundation elements were there from the start, and they brought them to me. So half the battle was fought before I even showed up on the scene.
Was working with the Wii different for you? Did you have to think differently about that platform?
You know, it was like a trip home. Actually, you know, the Wii is as powerful. It's way more powerful than the stuff we were building. You know, Underworld and System Shock and you know, Ultima 7 on. I mean, so it really wasn't tough to get back into that mindset again. Not particularly. No, it was just like old school game development where you focus on gameplay and you know, you just sort of make it work. It was really like a coming home.
Did you? I mean, not did you, but you benefited incredibly from Disney's pile of intellectual property.
You had great old I mean, there's clips in here that nobody's ever seen. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, was it hard to get at all of that, or did they just unlock the vault and say, "Go, you know, help yourself"?
I can't even tell you how magical it is that, you know, what is the largest you know, media company on the planet just opened the vault. They never said no. I pulled back from some stuff for a variety of reasons, and they certainly had suggestions about, you know, hey, maybe we don't want to do a world, you know, an Alice in Wonderland world with Tim Burton doing a movie, but all of the decisions and all of the no's were mine. Disney didn't say no to much of anything, and they really just made everything accessible. You know, it's like people ask me, you know, was it hard finding material? And it's like, no, it was hard figuring out what not to include. They've got so much stuff in the vaults that they're not doing anything with right now. It's amazing.
Well, and that's one thing I wanted to ask you. I mean, Disney often gets railed against as the example of copyright law gone bad. They protect everything. They're one of the reasons why copyright law has been extended. They're prime mover for that, to protect their intellectual property. You've benefited from that protection extensively in this game. But what's your feeling? Would we have seen something like Epic Mickey faster if we had different copyright laws?
You know, my minor was entertainment law when I was in grad school.
Oh, really?
But I would not want to call myself an expert on that topic. So you'd probably want to talk to someone else about that. All I know is that Disney had access to all that stuff. They gave me access to all that stuff, and in a small way, no, actually, you know, frankly, in a major way, the story of this game was driven by the loss of a copyrighted character. If you think about it, I mean, we brought Oswald the Lucky Rabbit back. Yeah, Oswald was Walt's first cartoon star, and he lost the rights to Oswald in 1928 in a contract dispute, a copyright dispute. And so that probably was the start of Disney saying that is never going to happen to me again.
Yeah, right.
And that probably explains a lot about why the company is protective of stuff. But you know, what does a company own? It's got, I mean, the assets are people and intellectual property. So protecting that property seems pretty sensible to me, honestly.
What are you working on these days?
Vacation.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So is that pretty typical after a 3-year development cycle that you just go, I'm done, and you collapse for a month or a year? Or?
Yeah. There's one of the things that a lot of people complain about hours in the game business, you know, and what they forget is when we're done with the crazy hours and the incredibly hard work, we kind of get to play games during the day and goof off a little bit and take some time off. It kind of balances out. So we're definitely in the let's achieve balance period right now.
So, but Junction Point is owned by Disney now. So does that mean you're going to continue to do Disney games?
I hope so. Like I said, when Disney acquired Junction Point, they got the rights to Ninja Gold, that project I was working with John Woo on, and
so that might be something.
And the other stuff. It'd be nice to get that back, but honestly, I really love doing the archive stuff. If Junction Point could just keep diving into the archives like Uncle Scrooge into his money bin.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be so much.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You have no idea how much stuff is in there waiting to just bring back to the public. It's
is there
incredible.
something that you wish you would have had room to include that you just couldn't? Something that you can talk about?
All sorts of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I had an idea for some music gameplay that I wish we could have done. But you can't do everything. I mean, the game it's about cutting out the pieces that don't feel right, and it just would have been crazy to do that in this game. I had some interesting ideas, and the team had some interesting ideas about an Alice in Wonderland inspired world, and there was Mickey and the Beanstalk. We had some fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
Who knows? Maybe it'll come back again. There's lots more to be explored in Wasteland if Disney wants us to.
You were working on was the Ninja Project on Steam?
No. There's so many incredible untrue.
This Wikipedia thing is wrong.
Yeah,
What?
I'm afraid so. No, I mean it was a traditional publishing deal, and yeah, that'd be great. Someone should.
It says he has established a new studio, Junction Point Studios, where he's working on an unspecified game to be built with Valve's source engine and released through Steam.
Yeah, we did some concept development for Valve. That probably would have gone out over Steam, but they own that. If they want to do something with it, they can. If they don't, that's their prerogative. So but that has nothing to do with Ninja Gold. Ninja Gold was a traditional boxed console game. That we were working on with a publisher.
What hasn't been done in games that should be done?
Wow.
There's got to be a whole
lot
of fertile territory there.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of really big problems that we need to solve now. That I don't think we're working quite hard enough on. One is non-combat AI. I mean, someone needs to make a game.
Yes. Thank you. It's because sprites and collisions were so easy to do. That's all we ever did.
That's exactly right. We not that making any game is easy, to be clear.
No, but the hardware kind of pointed us in a direction, I think.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The hardware and the fact that we all came out of playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
Let's also be clear about that.
Right.
We do that stuff very well. It's relatively easy. But can you imagine what would happen if John Carmack, devoted as much energy to non-combat AI, making virtual actors as powerful as they can be, as he does to 3D rendering. I mean,
and yet, I kind of wonder because
who knows what that guy could do?
Yeah,
and there are a lot of guys like that.
I wonder because then when people do these kind of non-combat games, I'm thinking of what was that great PlayStation 3 game with the stitched-up rag characters? Oh, I can't remember the name. It was such a wonderful game, but it just didn't really take off. Not 9, but it was like It was like the Planet. It was a wonderful
Little Big Planet.
Little Big Planet. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
There we go.
What a great game.
That did quite well.
Did it do? Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, they're still supporting it, and I think it was wonderful. But
that's an example of non-combat AI, right?
Sure. But what I'm talking about is in the context of a real story. I want to interact with people in a way that doesn't involve, punching or slicing or shooting, right?
Okay.
And there are games like Heavy Rain and BioWare's doing some interesting stuff with Mass Effect. I mean, conversation that is as compelling as combat. that is, I think, a worthy goal, and we need to be working harder on that.
I would suspect that's what Roger Ebert means when he says that games aren't significant, is they're not doing that kind of thing, and that once games can tell stories in the way that movies tell stories, then we'll have a medium.
Yeah, I was with you right up until that last comment. I think, we don't want to do things the way movies do.
Okay.
We want to find our own way.
As well as.
That makes sense, because when you take a book and turn it into a movie, you never have the movie like the book, because it's not the same medium.
Exactly.
And I've been wanting to ask you this the whole time we've been talking. It seems like more often than not, when you take a video game and turn it into a movie, it just doesn't make a very good movie. If you knew the secret of this, obviously you'd be making movies and be very rich. But what in your opinion is it that makes it so much harder to do that in that direction?
Well, I think there are a couple of reasons. I really want to keep working, so I'm going to be careful how I put this.
By the way, I edited your Wikipedia article.
Good job.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I took out the valve bit.
There are times when it's good to live in the 21st century. So movies. I think a lot of the problem is that some of the people, in fact, a lot of the people who can, do the green light decision thing out in Hollywood, they don't get games. They don't play them. They don't understand them. They think like Roger Ebert. I've talked to producers who and this is not universal. Let me be clear about that. Not universal, but there are people out there who have contempt for this medium, for our medium, for games. And I think if you have contempt for your material, you can't possibly do a good job. If you don't understand the medium, you can't do a good job of adapting it. So I think that's some of it, and that will change over time too. And then I think there's just a perception that movies are just slam bang action and there's nothing else going on in them. There's no deep story, there's no subtext, there are no themes, there's no nothing. And if you think that, you're just not going to write a great script. Now, when Laura Ziskin actually optioned Deus Ex back in 2000, and boy, I wish that project had happened, because I can tell you the script for that movie, or that movie to be that was never made, was incredible. It was a great script. It captured the spirit of Deus Ex without, aping it, without recreating it, perfectly. And I think, quality script, quality director, people who have respect for the medium they're adapting, for the material they're adapting, that's all it takes. And I don't think we see that often enough.
I also think that there's been a little bit of a gamification of the movies where story and plot. Yes. I mean, just look at any of the Transformer movies. Story and plot takes a backseat to combat action.
Well, there's a parallel to the comics industry there too, which what you're saying about people not taking the medium seriously yet. Comic movies didn't start becoming really decent until the 1990s.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's 60 years after the golden age began in comics. So hopefully we won't have to wait that long for good video game movies.
So you worked
on an accelerated schedule. So we've been on an accelerated schedule pretty much in all ways. So I don't think we'll wait 60 years. Let's hope it's not even 30.
You worked on the original Deus Ex. Have you seen the new Deus Ex?
Well, I've seen what the team has shown publicly, and frankly what they've shown to the press that maybe the public hasn't seen yet. And it's amazing. I mean, they went right back to Deus Ex 1 and put 21st century graphics on it. I can't wait to play it. It's amazing. Good. It looks really good.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's talk a little bit about game design, because whenever you get a great game designer on, I think this is a fascinating subject. Where do you start when you're starting to work on a game, Warren? What do you start with? What points?
Well, every project is different, which is one of the reasons I love being in game development. No two games are alike. No two teams are alike. Typically, I like to start with the verbs. What is the player going to do? We are a medium of doing, and so you have to decide what is the player going to do, and what are good verbs for your game. Like, the player learns about is a terrible verb because it doesn't actually tell you what the player is doing.
Right.
It tells you what's going to happen to the player. The player learns something somehow, but the how is the part that
and learning
the
is
game
very
design
passive in a lot of interpretations, not an active thing.
It can be, but it can be an active thing. But you learn through exploration. You learn by talking. You learn by. So how do you learn is what you have to get to if learning is the core activity of your game.
Can you give me an example of what you might write down on paper then?
Well,
player pushes a button and the floor drops out. That kind of thing.
No, it's like with Deus Ex, it was. You know, running, jumping, you know, solving problems by shooting, by talking, or by sneaking.
I get it.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Those
cool.
are things you can figure out how to translate shooting to a controller.
Right.
You can figure out how to translate sneaking to a controller, and it implies a whole lot of subsystems that your game is going to require. The player learns is not a good verb.
Right.
It doesn't tell me anything about how do I map that to an A button.
Right.
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 So you need good verbs. But, you know, honestly, with a game like Disney Epic Mickey, you start in a completely different place. You start with what is it that makes Mickey special? Why is Mickey the only thing from 1928 that anybody cares about in any way anymore?
That's a good point. Wait, that's a good point.
It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad. You know, as a guy who loves history, I mean, there was a lot happening in 1928 that was really fun and cool that I wish the world cared about. But the reality is, you know, even if all you think about is Mickey Mouse as an icon on a T-shirt or on a watch, he's still important. Why?
Right.
So that was where we started Disney Epic Mickey. What is it that has made him cool for 82 years? So, you know, sometimes you start there. Sometimes you start with a crazy idea. Like you know, one of the other big problems I think we have to solve in game development is how do we stop building movie sets, you know, and start building worlds. I mean, just to get back to origin, my first gig in electronic gaming was for a company that's motto was "We create worlds." How do we actually create a world where, you know, if a player peeks behind the curtain, they actually don't see the machinery? You know, sometimes you start with, we want to make a more dynamic, interactive world, which frankly was one of the gameplay starting points for Disney Epic Mickey. We wanted to create more dynamic worlds. So we had, here's Mickey, what makes him cool? Here's a desire to make a more dynamic world. Hey, we want to simulate a cartoon. You put all that together and you get, let's let the player draw and erase. Draw and erase are, I think, pretty good game verbs because you can see how to map them to a controller and to minute-to-minute action. So that's kind of the starting point. Verbs, heart of character, you know, what do you want players to experience as they play?
Could you see this turning into an online world? Can you extend that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, the Wasteland. Like I said, I didn't come up with the idea of Wasteland. I wish I had.
Yeah. But
that came from a group of interns at Disney Interactive.
Oh, wow.
It's unbelievable. I mean, well, Disney's always been committed to education, and it's never been truer or more impressive, at least to me, than Disney Epic Mickey. I mean, the core concept came from a group of interns. How remarkable!
Isn't that amazing?
It really is. But they came up with this idea for a world of forgotten and rejected Disney creativity.
Huh.
And
that's great.
That has
I love that.
Infinite possibilities.
That.
I was blown away. I was blown away.
Is that now? I'm looking at your Junction Point website, and you've got these student programs. Is that part of that?
Well, that is certainly part of it. You know, Disney Interactive is still has intern programs. I was out in Glendale at the Disney Interactive Studios offices. What was it? I guess in November, and gave a lecture and had a great talk with a group of incredibly talented interns there.
What a wonderful internship that would be! Wow.
Oh gosh, yeah. I wish I'd had that when I was young enough to have benefited from it.
You know, I've talked to John Lasseter, and that is one of the traditions, at least in animation, is this and I'm sure this is where Disney's coming from here, is this kind of mentorship and this handing down of the craft of animation. And even John Lasseter, who learned from people like Ub Iwerks at Disney, the magic of how to create a character, and it's important to hand that down. Does it apply?
Absolutely.
Does it apply in video games? I would think it would.
You know, it's starting to. Yeah, I look at Richard Garriott and Chris Roberts and a guy named Steve Jackson in tabletop games as mentors. No doubt about it. I mean, I learned so much from those guys. But it was kind of ad hoc, I guess. It's not like there was any conscious, I am passing down knowledge to you, Right. Now we're getting to the point where there are university programs in game development where frankly, there are guys like me who've been doing it for 27 years. And it's almost more interesting to me now to sort of work with young up-and-coming designers like we have at Junction Point than it is for me to make a game. In a sense, I almost feel like my job now is to create the next generation of guys like me and like Richard and like Chris.
Yeah.
The guys who are going to show me how this is done.
I'm sure that's where that comes from. Yeah. Do you still play tabletop games?
Not as much as I'd like to. I don't do role playing. Up until we really started working very, very hard on Disney Epic Mickey, I was still an avid board gamer. I am an avid board gamer, and that's something that when you talk about work-life balance, I got to get back to playing.
What do you play?
Games. They're the German board games,
like Settlers of Catan. That kind
Settlers of Catan. We've played Settlers so much that if we never played again, it will be just fun.
I'm trying to get my family to play with me, and they won't. I have it, and I really want to get them to play, and they won't.
We should have Settlers of Catan breaks.
We should.
You should. Settlers of Catan. Carcassone's a great game.
Carcassonne, yep.
Tikal is an unsung, amazing, wonderful game. Acquire, Sid Sackson's masterpiece. Still maybe my favorite game of all time. I mean, there are lots of great board games.
Is there any relationship between the play of those games and what you do at all?
Certainly having a respect for rules, I think, is something that translates. We're a rules-based medium. If we don't write a rule, you can't do something, no matter how much you might want to.
Right.
The interesting thing, though, I spent 7 years making tabletop games of one sort or another. And the interesting thing that I had to learn when I got into electronic games is that how literal this medium is. If we don't code something, if we don't say, you can do this, player, and here's how you do it, you can't do it.
It's the opposite of the real world, where rules prevent you from doing things. In video games, rules allow you to do things.
Exactly. But when I remember the last thing I did at TSR when I was up there, I was working on the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Well, that's a mouthful. Anyway.
I love it.
But after I left, when I left, the manuscript was complete. All of the tables were there. But sometime between when I left TSR and when I went back to Gen Con later that year, someone had left out a critical combat table. And, no one noticed or cared because players just made up their own rules. They made the game their own. And that doesn't work in video games.
No.
So rules-based translates directly, but we're such a literal medium that this is so much harder. Oh my god!
Do you play video? Do you play any video games too?
Yeah, of course, sure.
What video games do you play?
Well, right now I'm trying to get caught up, so I'm still playing Arkham Asylum. I'm trying to finish Heavy Rain right now. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of great games out there now. I'm playing some Kirby's Epic Yarn just because I love Kirby and I love platformers and stuff. I'm trying to finish Toy Story 3 from Avalanche. It's one of Disney Interactive's. Frankly, I think it's one of the best games the company's done.
No Red Dead Redemption.
Well, that's that. If that isn't waiting for me in a couple of days, that and Gran Turismo 5.
Ah, yeah.
Those two games better be under a virtual tree for me. Yeah. I'll be very
both of them
unhappy.
are worth having under your tree. Believe me.
If they're not, I'll be at a store the next day buying them, so it's okay.
Warren, everybody should run out, get a Wii, and play Epic Mickey. And if
I agree wholeheartedly.
If you don't already have a Wii, if you have a Wii, obviously you already have Epic Mickey. But if you don't, go get a Wii, then get Epic Mickey.
Well, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it.
It was such a pleasure getting to talk to you. Meeting you. I think we met many years ago.
We did. I think I was on another show of yours about 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. Wow.
It is. Let's not think about that.
Let's not. But great to see you again. Let's put it that way.
Good to see you guys too.
Yeah, and don't be a stranger. I'm very excited to see what you do next. I think the medium has reached a point of maturity where we have the tools. We can really start exploring some really deep ideas. And if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Warren Spector.
Oh, thank you.
So I really appreciate your time with us.
That was great. This is fun.
Take care, Warren.
Thanks, Warren.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, and it even worked on Google Talk.
Look at that.
Yay!
Just a little dropout here and there. Nothing bad.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
It was nothing you wouldn't have with Skype.
I really mean it. I think that we are getting to the point now where I understand why people disdain and kind of put down video games. And you look at the early games especially. They feel like toys.
And they were.
That's
how they were marketed.
We are now capable of making that transition from toy to true artistic medium. And unfortunately, and this is where I really liked what he said about working on non-combat stuff. Unfortunately, we're so tied to the tropes of the toy days that people are having difficulty moving into new dimensions. And
I can't help but see the parallels between comics and video games. They seem to just match so well.
Yes, that's true. And comics did the same thing,
We
didn't
are
they?
getting our Watchmen and our Sin City and our...
yes, that's a very apt analogy.
Los Bros... what was it? Love and Rockets.
Yeah.
We're getting those comics now in video form with Heavy Rain, with Red Dead Redemption, with these much richer storytelling, with these Bioshock.
Well, and it started with graphic novels. It started with things like Mouse, where real artists said, this is a good medium. And I think it starts because they grow up with that medium. So what's his name? Spiegelman, Art Spiegelman, who wrote Mouse, grew up with comic books. So so when it came time to tell his grandfather's story as a Jew in Nazi Germany, it made sense for him to make it a comic book.
Because of the form.
Because the form, he loved and absorbed the form. And I think that's why gaming, I think that's what has to happen, is people who grow up with gaming then say, now this is a medium that's more than just a plaything. This is a medium that we can use to be fully expressive. And obviously that's what Warren's looking at.
Yeah, it's no longer just a kid's thing.
Yep.
Although we're still you don't hear comic books are corrupting the youth. Comic books need to be stopped.
You don't hear that anymore.
You're starting to hear that go away with video games a little bit, but it isn't gone yet.
Yeah. Maybe soon. Maybe someday. That's true. You really do hear that still.
Yeah.
Hard to believe.
The last echoes of it.
Hard to believe. Yeah, those guys are dying in a month or two, and then it'll be all over.
Or getting disbarred.
Yes.
In some cases.
Yes, as a matter of fact. We hope you enjoyed this show, Triangulation. We really do. I mean, it's a chance for Tom and me to talk to some of the most interesting people. And it's not just, I was going to say in our business, but it really isn't just in our business.
No. Just
I think
interesting people
just
in the
interesting
world.
people. And that's, to be honest with you, the main reason I got into broadcasting is just so I could talk to interesting people. So, and I'm sure that's true of you too. We will do more of this. We thank you for joining us every Wednesday, or most every Wednesday at 4 p.m. We'll do. Not next Wednesday. We're going to take the week off, but we'll be back. Actually, I don't know about the following Wednesday because we're getting ready to go to CES.
We'll be at CES the Wednesday after next. Yeah. So
it's
maybe
gonna
a couple
be
weeks.
A few weeks before we get back to Triangulation. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.